After the assassination of a Turkish diplomat, Ankara launches an aerial assault against the PKK. I'm Imran Garda, and today on the Newsmakers, we look at how the killing of a Turkish consul worker could affect military operations in northern Iraq. For the first time in 25 years, a Turkish diplomat has been killed in the line of duty. Osman Köse was working at Turkey's consulate in Erbil when a gunman shot him dead while he dined at a local restaurant. Two men suspected of his killing have been arrested, but no group has claimed responsibility. For many, though, the most likely perpetrator is the PKK. Ankara vowed to respond, and within a day of the assassination, Turkey's defense minister announced an aerial assault on the Kandil Mountains, saying the PKK had been dealt a deadly blow. It's the latest operation against the terror group, which lost one of its top leaders earlier this month. In a moment, we'll discuss what impact the Erbil assassination could have. But first, Adam Pletz has this report.
Osman Köse's coffin stands flanked by Turkish officials, among them the foreign, defense and health ministers. The 36-year-old diplomat was assassinated last Thursday in a restaurant in Erbil, the capital of the Kurdish autonomous region of northern Iraq. Köse's assailant shot him in the head as he was paying his bill. Two Kurdish Iraqi citizens, including his bodyguard, were also killed. Turkish government and opposition figures have condemned the attack.
All our neighbors, all countries should know that our diplomats, our friends working abroad, represent the Republic of Turkey. Each attack on them is an attack on Turkey. We won't tolerate such attacks, and we want to know the motive behind this attack.
On Saturday, the Kurdish regional government arrested Muslim Dar on suspicion of killing Köse. Dar is the brother of a member of the Turkish parliament from the opposition HDP party, which Ankara has accused of being linked to the PKK. Since late May, Turkey has been waging a ground and air offensive against PKK bases in northern Iraq, known as Operation Claw. Ankara says it's killed dozens of militants in Iraq's Kirkuk region, which it says the PKK uses as a staging ground to launch attacks in Turkey. Since Köse's killing, Turkey has carried out further airstrikes. Officials have indicated that they will retaliate if they conclude that the PKK are responsible for Köse's death.
I wish God's mercy to our consular employee who lost his life in the grim attack in Erbil and express my condolences to his relatives. An investigation has been started to find the perpetrators. Those who committed this treacherous attack will be given the necessary response.
Köse is the first Turkish diplomat to have been killed on foreign soil since 1994. How might his assassination affect Turkey's ongoing military operations in northern Iraq? Adam Pletz, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now in the Turkish town of Didim is Murat Aslan. He led the intelligence division within the Turkish Armed Forces and is now a security researcher at think tank the SETA Foundation. In Baghdad is Ahmed Rushdie. He's the senior foreign policy advisor to the Speaker of the Iraqi Parliament. And in Erbil is Hiwa Osman, who served as media advisor to former Iraqi President Jalal Talabani between 2005 and 2008. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers. Murat Aslan, is it absolutely clear to you that it was the PKK that did this and targeted Osman Köse and killed him?
For sure, because we know that PKK mostly conducted such kind of, assassinations in Turkey. And as you know, it was last month that they announced a building of a new organization to revenge Turkish operations in the north, at the north of Iraq. And we know that these two guys are heavily affiliated with PKK, either in Turkey or in northern Iraq. That means, yes, all indicators indicate and clearly, show that this attack was pure PKK commitment.
Right, and Murat, the fact that there was a denial that came out of the PKK, what does that suggest? Does it suggest divisions within the organization? What is it telling us?
Yeah, I do not see any moral aspect in PKK's strategy. And we have not witnessed any kind of, honor in terms of, conducting such kind of attacks to Turkish civilians or security forces or officials like diplomats. This is a very clear, attempt that this attack was a terror act. And PKK is, struggling for justification of its presence and also in a process to legitimize herself. And mostly Western states perceive PKK as a terrorist organization and sometimes are hesitant to label it as a kind of secular organization. But this attack clearly confirmed the real face of PKK and what the PKK is actually in terms of a terrorist organization.
Ahmed Rushdie, what does it mean to you that this happened on Iraqi soil?
Well, it's a very strange incident that it can happen in Erbil, because we all know that Erbil is a secure place. North of Iraq is a secure place for all diplomats, not only the regional diplomat, but also the international diplomat. And for Iraq as Iraq is actually it's a breach, it's a security breach. That I think now Baghdad, Erbil, and Ankara on the same line to try to solve this puzzle in a way or another and try to manage those security things. Especially Baghdad and Ankara has now, let's say, a very good relations in a way or another. And also Erbil with the presence of the new Prime Minister, Mr. Masroor Barzani, and he went to Baghdad, he talked to all the authorities, all the officials in Baghdad, which means that opened a new gate for a new era of Baghdad-Erbil relationship. So all those things, I think all those incidents that happen now, it will not affect the relationship between Baghdad, Erbil, and Ankara.
Right. Hiwa Osman, what is the context to this attack in your eyes?
First of all, I think we have to see the investigations have not concluded yet. It is not very clear if it's the PKK or not. I think it becomes wishful thinking to preempt any results of the investigation and to immediately jump to the conclusion. The PKK in these areas has been instrumental in the war against terror. They have been fighting ISIS tooth and nail alongside the international coalition in their different forms in the past. Of course, not as clearly as PKK. The PKK in the past, they have some presence on the border areas, but they have never conducted attacks like this in Iraqi Kurdistan or inside the city of Erbil in such a manner. Shortly after the incident, they issued a statement saying that they have nothing to do with this and they know nothing about it. So I don't know what's the logic behind doing an attack and immediately denying it. I don't know what aim is to be achieved. So it's very clear so far, in the absence of the investigation results and in the presence of daily shellings and attacks on civilian villages on the border areas of Iraqi Kurdistan, the villages, civilians, shepherds who with their sheep, with their herds in these areas, the continuous threat by the Turkish state against the Rojava or the Syrian Kurdistan can only suggest to the people here that definition of terror is very interesting for Turkey. I mean, for the gentleman, Mr. Murat Aslan, who was immediately jumping to that conclusion, I think he should be a bit more considerate with that, because we are still to see the results of the investigation and to see whether it is actually the PKK. And if the results come out,
your answer had two parts,
followed by...
Certainly, and sorry to interrupt you. Your answer had two parts. Because on the one hand, you said initially, we need to wait and see. Fair enough, nothing conclusive. But in the second part of your answer, you're providing a context for which you're suggesting this is why the PKK would attack Turkish interests.
No, right? to go straight away into that, in a situation like this that Turkey is going through, instead of talking about the possibilities of peace process, some kind of peace process in order to put an end to the bloodshed inside Turkey, to even now to go for the option of labeling this group and the other group as terrorists, and this
labeled
is
a terror
to jump into
organization,
the
right?
conclusion that they
it's not that Murad Aslan made it up.
Quite interesting.
Okay, certainly, but it's not like Murad Aslan made it up. It's a listed terror organization according to the definition of the state. But let's go to Murad for a response here. Okay,
look,
fair enough. But it's not as if he just pulled it out of nowhere, right? Here what?
The PLO and Mr. Mandela were also terrorist organizations.
Certainly, and we could have that debate about one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, but for the context of this debate, it's listed by the Turkish state as a terrorist organization. It's fighting it as a terrorist organization. Murad didn't make it up, right? Murad, Hiwa disagrees with you about the context, and he also feels that you're jumping to conclusions. Address that for me.
Okay, let's isolate the latest incident and later then question all other activities of PKK, either in Turkey, in Syria, or in Iraq. Can you say that PKK is innocent since PKK suppressed even the Kurdish people and assassinated civilians and forced families to deliver their sons or daughters as a member of PKK, or either paying at least 30,000 Turkish liras at the southeast of Turkey? So it's totally, your words are totally the words of PKK. Okay, the second issue is that the villages that you have mentioned are the bases of PKK, which are located to the border of Turkey. And third thing, there's a coordination mechanism between Iraq and Turkey, which is clearly identifying which villages are full or emptied by PKK. And after Iraqi officials confirmed that it is not Iraqis, settled individuals, they are being targeted by Turkish officials.
If you look at the map.
Okay. And finally, another issue. Let's take the history of PKK. What PKK did, for instance, to Turkish people in Syria. Now we have 400,000 Kurdish people in Turkey, which are, escaping from PKK. And the same is valid, in the Iraqi territory, because they are forcefully evacuated the villages because PKK just wanted to hold a kind of area that is, a kind of safe haven for them. Then why? Big people in Ahmadiyya insulted PKK members last week. So if you discuss the overall issue,
let's get a response from Hiba.
PKK is a terrorist organization. That's it.
Hiba?
Well, I think this line of argument will get Turkey nowhere. It's really unfortunate to see intellectuals and thinkers just repeating the rhetoric of the hardliners of the Turkish state. So if you want to go, and violence is usually responded to by violence. If you go, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it is very unfortunate to keep repeating and pressing the same rhetoric. Today, regardless of this incident, if it's PKK or not, Turkey is at an important crossroads. ISIS is defeated, thanks in part to the PKK, the PYD and the Iraqi Kurds, of course, who collaborated with the international coalition to defeat ISIS. Their presence in Sinjar in the early days was important to prevent genocide against the Yazidis when ISIS came, and in Kobani they were very instrumental. All of this was happening in full view of the Turkish army. They were watching all of this. They were hoping for all these areas to fall into the hands of ISIS. So if you go back to that area, there is always a counter argument for what you say.
Okay.
Unfortunately, today nobody seems to be looking forward.
Okay.
The leader of the PKK is imprisoned in Turkey. Recently, he has issued some statements for peace. It's not being reciprocated. The reciprocation is by shelling and bombing.
Okay.
One more thing on the geography. I would implore you to look at the map. The areas that are being shelled and that you are calling them bases of the PKK, are right on the Iranian border. They are in Kandil Valley and Sidakan. Sidakan is closer to Iran than to Turkey. So it's, I would check my geography again and look at the map more clearly and look at the places of the attacks. These areas that are being shelled are on the Iranian border and they are not on the Turkish border.
Murat?
Okay, let me tell briefly. Where is Metina? Where is Zabkan? Where is Haftani? Are they just along the Iranian border? No. They are very close to Turkish border. And if you go through Gara Mountain, for instance, you can see the main camp of PKK. And we know that they are heavily based and armed over there. And they are trying to cut all the civilian access to the mountain because there is only one pass towards the mountain. Second thing, if PKK is such a kind of brave organization fighting against ISIS, I don't believe that because it's only the US aerial support that made PKK stand firm. Otherwise, we would witness what happened in Ain al-Arab. PKK does not have any capacity to fight against any organization. And if PKK has a capacity, they are struggling for 40 years for something, but they are not successful. That's it. And another issue, Mr. Hiwa, your words are totally designed to influence the Western perception on PKK, but it will not change the image and also the reality about PKK. If you go, website and click PKK plus child, you can see the images of babies who are killed, directly killed by PKK terrorists. So who can justify it? Who can, tell the reasoning of such kind of killings? And please, just ask, Kurds at the north of Iraq, just go to the, edge of the Turkish borders and ask families what they are thinking about PKK.
You can't even say Kurdistan.
And
you cannot even bring yourself to say Kurdistan.
Sorry for that, but your sentiments are purely and totally PKK. But unfortunately, you are a guide of Talabani, and I do not know whose interests you have defended. That's
okay,
it.
I want to ask Ahmed Rushdie about what Baghdad does now, and also what the KRG does. So you've had the targeting and killing of a Turkish diplomat, most likely by the PKK, happening in northern Iraq at this moment in time. Things were possibly looking rosier during peace negotiations over the years, but that's fallen apart. There is no peace at the moment, and we're seeing symptoms of it within Turkey, we're seeing symptoms of it within Syria, and symptoms within northern Iraq now. What's the primary responsibility of both Baghdad and Erbil at this moment in time when it comes to Turkey and the PKK?
Well, let us note something. It's happened after His Excellency Mr. Masroor Barzani became the Prime Minister. So many security breaches happen. There are so many talks that Erbil is not safe anymore, and so on. So it's maybe some sort of internal dispute inside Kurdistan. In a way or another, it stopped. I think it stopped after Mr. Masroor made some sort of a security measurements, and also with talks with Baghdad, with the Prime Minister, with the President, and with the Speaker. It became obvious that all the authorities in Baghdad is willing to help Erbil to maintain security inside Kurdistan. And another thing is that Baghdad will not accept any another security breach against any diplomat, either Arabic or regional or international. In a way or another, Baghdad and Erbil relationship will actually be in contact in a way that security aspect will be always priority between Baghdad and Erbil. This is first. And secondly, let us also notice is that those security breaches will also affect the economical situation, either in Baghdad or in Erbil. In a way or another, it will show that Iraq is not stable. Iraq is not a buffer zone anymore between all the crises that happen around Iraq. And also, let us also not forget is that Baghdad-Ankara relationship become more and more in contact and become more and more profitable for both sides, especially in the economical aspect. And all those things need to be managed well. All those things need to be studied well, and I'm supporting is that we need to wait until the investigations will be ended by the KRG authorities, and also I think Baghdad has some sort of impact on those investigations because at the end it's the central government need to know exactly what's happened, who is responsible for this major security breach.
Ahmed, Hiwa, and Murat, I've got to move on, but I thank you all for joining us on the Newsmakers. Pakistan is desperately trying to save its economy, and one thing that's set to make matters worse is a World Bank order to pay almost $6 billion in damages. It relates to a stalled mining project in the province of Balochistan. The Reko Dic mine has vast gold and copper reserves, and it seems everyone wants a piece. In a 700-page ruling, the World Bank declared Pakistan had acted improperly in 2011 when it unlawfully refused to grant the Tethyan Copper Company a lease. Prime Minister Imran Khan has ordered an investigation to find out who's responsible. After all, Pakistan is literally sitting on a gold mine, but has somehow ended up losing money. And with Balochistan prone to violence and battling an insurgency, this cash cow could have been the solution to many of its problems. So, how did it all go so wrong? Let's bring in our panel. Senator Anwar ul-Haq Kakar joins me from Islamabad. He's the co-founder of Balochistan Awami Party, an ally of Prime Minister Imran Khan's PTI government. Hakeem Baloch is in London. He's the president of the Baloch National Movement, a political party seeking independence for Balochistan. And Hassan Khawar is an international development and policy analyst and a former Pakistani civil servant. He joins me from Toronto. Good to have you all on the program. Anwar ul-Haq Kakar, the investigation will happen, but fundamentally, is everybody involved in the Pakistani state and decision-making throughout this entire 7-year-long process to blame for making a mess of this?
Thank you for having me. I would partly agree with you that there is a lack of understanding in terms of governance and making decisions when it comes of being savvy and appreciative of the corporate culture, that how does the corporate world works. There has been some structural issues on the part of the government which they were not able to appreciate properly while making certain decisions in the past.
Hassan Khawar?
Yes.
What do you think? Who's to blame?
I think the blame has to be shared by all involved. I actually missed some part of your intro, but I think the provincial government of Balochistan, which actually structured this transaction from the day one, there were many flaws, and I think bulk of the blame have to be borne by them.
Right. Hakeem Baloch, when you hear that the Pakistani government has to pay $6 billion now to this corporation, although there might be a deal, it might get a discount, there could be a negotiation, but the mere fact that this thing that was potentially a fantastic windfall for so many people has now become a massive fine for Pakistan in Balochistan. Do you believe that because it's Balochistan, this is what happened?
Well, thank you, first of all, for letting me speak. Of course, because we've seen it's not just this project, which was, if you consider, as you said, Pakistan has gold, and then now they have to pay a big amount. It seems lack of interest, not only to those projects, but we have seen they are not even interested in the people of those areas or in those regions where these projects are taking place. And when we say who's to blame, when if you ask me, I think we must blame the big crocodiles in this game. One of them is Pakistan Army and the federal government.
Mm-hmm. Right. Let me ask you the question, Hakeem, that if the project had to go as planned, and there was no fine to be paid, and there was a lot of wealth made from the project over the past 9 years or so, would that have reached the people of Balochistan?
In that region, particularly where
Yes.
these projects are, people have no drinking water till today. Okay, so, and this is not only Reko Dic, and if we talk about Sandik project, recently there was a video which was shared by BBC Urdu. It was showing a child, he was around a kid like 10 years, 11 years, he was forced to work and he has no school to go. And we've seen international, multinational companies, they say they're working in those areas. Now I'm not talking about the whole Balochistan, which is so much deprived. There's no education, no drinking water, no basic needs whatsoever. But if we particularly talk about these areas, the people has nothing. So I don't think in any way any projects under the military rule or without a honest bonding between the people of Balochistan and these even those multinational companies, because if you don't care about the locals, I don't know how you're gonna make them happy with your success.
Anwarul Haq Kakar, even if Reko Dic wasn't mishandled, this project would not have trickled down to benefit the people of Balochistan. That's according to Hakim Baloch. Do you agree with him?
Well, let me clarify one thing, that this is not the finality of the decision which probably people would create an impression of. We still have got certain judicial remedies, which one is the annulment of this decree which has been given in the favor of Detention, and another area is that we can go for judicial revision, and the third, we can still negotiate with the company, which they have also indicated and they've shown an interest in a negotiated settlement. So it's not all that bad as it appears to your audience. As far as the people of Balochistan is concerned and the people of Pakistan is concerned.
I'm sorry, Anwar, just before you go ahead, and I know there's a delay.
Constitutionally elected
you're
government.
You're gonna have an opportunity to say the second part of what you wanted to say, but when you say it's not as bad, come on, I mean, a $6 billion fine for Pakistan. At the moment, the IMF is hanging over Pakistan's head. Imran Khan's going to the Chinese for investments. There's massive poverty in the country. And this was a huge project to a lot of jingoism and a lot of nationalism and a lot of patriotism. Many years ago, the Pakistani army and the Pakistani government said, hey, we're going to take control of this. We don't need foreigners to handle this. And now the government has egg on its face because you have a credible international institution saying $6 billion needs to be paid to this organization. I don't know how you can say that it's not as bad as it looks. Are you maybe open to revising what you just said?
Yes. Yes, I'll still maintain my position and I'll still try to explain so that your audience does get a sense of balance, that why I am saying so. First of all, the whole 14 and whole 16, both of them, which is commonly known as Reko Dic reserves, the established data which is lying with the Detention company, they are worth around $700 billion. So what we're gonna have in a bad negotiated deal, probably we would have ended up by earning maximum $4 to $5 billion, maybe with the spread of 2 or 3 decades. So in that sense, we would have ended up with a bad deal either way. So it was always good to have resisted and tried to get the best contractual benefit for the people of the area. So that's why in that context I'm saying that it's not that bad as it appears. We did commit some mistakes during the process of exploration license. There were lack of rules, there were lack of regulations. We should had these regulations back in the decade of 90s, we would have probably ended up in a better deal, which unfortunately we didn't do. But at the same time, we could renegotiate on the behalf of the people of Balochistan and Pakistan, and still we can maximize our benefit in a model which is a win-win situation. probably for the company also, and for the people of the area also.
Hassan,
this is what I'm trying to explain.
Hassan Khawar, is that a reasonable analysis of this current situation?
So I'm not as optimistic as the senator, and I believe that the way this transaction was handled is a classic case of bureaucratic incompetence and vested interests, because the contract that initiated in 1993 changed hands so many times. The terms and conditions were not good, and it went on from one party to another, and the deal was visibly murky. But the way it was handled and the way it was procured, I think says a lot. And then when the case goes to settlement court, we need to know what cards we are holding. And I think that at some point in time, our legal advisors advised to go for a settlement, but I don't think that the government listened, and this is where we are standing. But I would also like to say a couple of words about what you asked earlier, that if the transaction were happened successfully, would the benefits would reach Balochistan. And when you look at the province, the poverty levels are the highest. It witnesses the highest level of stunting. But if you look at the resource distribution within Pakistan, for the last many years, the provincial government's share has been increasing. And we have not witnessed a commensurate or equivalent level of improvement in poverty levels. In fact, the indicators have all gone south. So I believe that it is time that we move beyond this debate of federal versus provincial resource distribution, which should be open for further debate and for further improvement, but also see the systems in place at the provincial government level. Even this transaction was conceived and initialized by Balochistan Development Authority, and we have clearly seen where it has gone. I'm not saying that the federal government is very competent, but I think we need to now really look into the systems, the bureaucracies which are responsible and which handle these multi-billion-dollar contracts without any due training or skill.
Hakeem Baloch, there is money, but it's being mishandled and it's not getting to the people on the ground. Do you agree with Hassan?
Well, there is money, but that money is being shared within the bureaucracy and within the people which are serving the interest of the army. I must say that, because as Mr. Kakar said, that they're gonna represent the people of Balochistan if there's a negotiation or anything else happen. But let's just not stick to the Reko Dic. We are experiencing Sandic, we have CPEC, and all those projects are not bringing any brightness for the future of Balochistan. Or even today, as I earlier mentioned, people have no drinking water, and even those international companies must not ignore the conflicts
Hakeem,
going on in there.
Let me pose something to you here. So you have this massive port project, right, as one of the fruits of CPEC. Are you willing to give Islamabad a chance to provide jobs, to provide development, so that you don't have to say we need our own separate country, to give them a chance to grow the economy so that Balochistan can feel a stronger and better, more thriving part of Pakistan? Are you willing to give them that chance?
Well, if we talk about chances, the Baloch leadership have given many chances to the establishment, to Islamabad, even to the military of Pakistan. Look, Balochistan was forcefully occupied, and then, since then, in the last 7 decades, we have not seen a single development for the people of Balochistan. So if you're giving development to a particular class in your turn because they are supporter of your ideas, that's not the development for the people of Balochistan. I know there may be 2-3 Baloch in every sector, but if we are counting development by giving 3 jobs to locals and then 3,000 to the outsiders, I don't think so this will work. And if they were serious, they would have do it in last 2 decades, but they're not serious.
Okay, Anwarul Haq, is Balochistan neglected?
Let me respond to the question which you have raised, because it's so controversial. I personally feel that 98% of Balochistan and Balochistanis, be they Baloch, ethnically Pashtun, or other background of ethnicity they have, They don't need to give a chance to Islamabad or Federation. They are part of Federation. They are part of that country. If there is a marginalized group, a militant organizations who are bent upon craving out an idea which seems quite fair to them, that falls in an unconstitutional category. It's an illegal entity. Recently, even such organization has been designated as terrorist organizations by the United States of America. Domestically, they are being treated in that manner. So they are not the voice of mainstream Baloch populace. So we should not forget that we cannot equalize the mainstream voices and marginalized voices. Yes, they do have existence, but they do not represent the mainstream of Baloch population. Having said this, we are part and parcel of that federation. Thousands and thousands of Baloch have been employed in the rest of the country. And the rest of the countrymen, they get employed within our province. So it is not like two distinct entities which would have some sort of negotiated settlement and have a give and take. It's one bloodstream. It's like one body politic which revolves throughout without any stoppage. And that is the essence and that is the spirit of a nation state. So Pakistan is a nation state in which these four federating units, they operate, they represent, they get their rights, and they have got their responsibilities too. So I do not see that kind of conflict between federation and province, to be honest.
Yeah, and to the point that Anwar had made, the US earlier this month labeled the BLA, the Balochistan Liberation Army, a terrorist group, blaming it for attacks on Chinese assets in Balochistan. That's a related but separate debate that I want to have on Balochistan. We can maybe consider this segment to be our introduction to Balochistan here on the Newsmakers. And I thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure getting your thoughts on the Tetian copper situation and whether Pakistan will actually get to pay that $6 billion. Gentlemen, I have to move on. Looking forward to having you all on the Newsmakers sometime soon. Hassan Khawar, Hakim Baloch, and Anwarul Haq Kakar. Thanks again.
We came out to continue to protest with respect to our leaders' seriously deteriorating health. And then, as we came out in mass, all of a sudden, the police started tear gassing the protesters and then even shooting live ammunition.
His supporters want him freed. The courts have demanded his release, but Nigeria's government won't let him go. Sheikh Ibrahim al Zakzaky is one of the most prominent Shia clerics in Nigeria, but for the past 3.5 years he's been in prison after being arrested during a raid on his home. Since then, more than 300 members of his Islamic movement in Nigeria have been killed, including 6 of his sons. Last week, a hearing was scheduled for his release on medical grounds, but it was postponed, and his family says the delay could be fatal. So to discuss this, I'm joined now by Suhaila Zakzaky in Kuala Lumpur. She is the daughter of the jailed cleric, Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaky. And in Abuja, Nigeria, we have Ayobami Ayalowo. He's the Deputy Director of Media and Communication for the ruling APC presidential organization. Good to have you both on the program. Suhaila, first of all, what do you know about your father's health right now?
First of all, thank you for having me. And currently, his condition is not very good because recently, in the past few weeks, they discovered a very dangerous levels of lead and cadmium in his blood. And the doctors are saying that if he's not taken to a proper medical facility for proper treatment, he might actually die. And it's only getting worse because in the last week, he actually had a second stroke in addition to the one he had previously.
The presiding judge, Justice Darius Kobo, has adjourned the sitting.
Yeah.
So they've delayed the decision until July 29th. It's a few days' time. Do you still feel that that's too far away?
It is quite far away, considering that Even it was more than a week prior to the first court date that the doctors did say that it's an emergency situation. And 1 week later, after convening at the court, it's been adjourned for 11 more days. Anything can happen in the span of this 11 days. Apparently, with his condition, a lot of the doctors are saying that he has the lead levels in his blood is more than about 400 times the normal amount that should be there. And that's really alarming because the severity of lead poisoning could cause his organs to fail at any moment, and that's really scary. 11 days feels like a extensively long time.
Just to be clear, do you believe that he's been poisoned by someone?
Of course. He must have been. If he's not poisoned by someone, how's there poison in his blood or in his system? You understand?
Okay. Ayobami, before we talk about the politics, before we look at whether you believe that detention is justified or not, do you agree that perhaps it's best if the Sheikh is given the opportunity to travel abroad for treatment?
Well, like you rightly asked earlier, it is clear that there is a court judgment that will that will finally say whether he will be allowed to travel for treatment or not. Now, if the court has not said he can leave, you cannot force the issue. The unnecessary demonstration, burning down government properties, burning down private cars is wrong, is barbaric, and it is completely anathema to common sense. So if you are already in court and the court says they will sit on the 29th, and you want to go ahead and start burning down properties, I think it doesn't make any sense.
If he dies before the 29th...
I think they are wrong.
Okay,
I think they are causing too much problem for
but
everybody in
Abuja.
Abuja.
You're sticking to the rules here. You're being very by the book here. If he dies before the 29th, would you feel okay about that?
I don't think he will die. This is just a case of propaganda. They have been used to telling too many lies.
But how do you know?
So I think if the court says he will be, because the court has the record of his health, and I think the justice sitting at the court is not a fool. If he says there is no, he will sit on the 29th, that means he has been properly advised by the medical people on when he can sit. So I don't think there's any danger to his health. I think they're just making this up in their usual way of making propaganda about everything.
I don't want to have this 10-minute discussion all about whether he's sick or not, or to what extent he is sick, right? But I'm glad that we've discussed that for a couple of minutes. I want to ask you, Ayobami, if you believe his detention is justified, and if you believe that the group should be unlawful. Go ahead. Tell Suhaila.
Well, in my own view, he was rightly detained by the authority about 2 or 3 courts. That means he has a multifaceted court cases. And even if one court released him, other courts are still dealing with it. And you must remember this issue or this case originated from Kaduna State. And therefore, it is the Kaduna State government who, and the court in Kaduna that will finally give the final ruling. So coming to disturb people that are living their lives in Abuja is completely illegal. What the group is doing is wrong. We are seeing another group that is tending toward another Boko Haram problem if they are not dealt with appropriately. You cannot go around the street, defacing everywhere, causing commotion. Many people in Abuja now cannot go out of their homes and offices as we speak right now because of these guys. So it is wrong. No country will allow this kind of thing. It is barbaric. It is completely anathema to common sense. And they
You've
should
used
be
the word
proscribed.
barbaric a couple of times. Suhaila, do you belong to a barbaric group?
Yes. It's quite funny, actually, his remarks, because first of all, the protests that have been going on for the past 4 years have been quite absolutely peaceful. And each time when there has been chaos or the said violence, it is because of the fact that the police were shooting at these processions. Even today, about 2 hours before this particular interview, actually, as I was on my way to the studio, I was reading that the protest that is going on in Abuja has been attacked by the police, and many people have been killed. I'm not sure about the statistics, of course, because it's still ongoing. So I have to. It will take maybe about an hour or so to figure out exactly how many people have been killed or how many have been injured. But in each of the cases that there has been any case of violence, it is a violence that has been instigated by the security forces because they attacked these processions. And it is not illegal to protest in the first place. It is absolutely their legal right to protest. And how else are we supposed to voice our grievances to the government that deliberately my father was not arrested like the normal way that people get arrested. Military came over to our house, raided it, killed as many people as possible in their path, including shooting my dad. And I don't think they actually knew they weren't going to kill him. It was pretty much a miracle that he survived in the first place, and kept him in detention. And it took the government about 3 years to come up with any charges that is now what is in the Kaduna state government, the one that is in the court right now. By any standard, what has been happening for the past 4 years, there's no justification for it. I don't believe the government has any justification for it.
Right. So, Hela, on Twitter last week, we had a discussion last week about your father's detention. And on Twitter last week, we asked if people thought Sheikh Zakzaky was being persecuted. One viewer called Sulaiman Abdulaziz, who calls himself a political commentator and aspiring senator, said this to us, and I'm going to quote him. He said, "Those calling for his release are the enemies of this country. There has been peace in Zaria throughout his stay in detention. Till now, let him remain there so we can continue to enjoy our peace." And let me just add to that, we don't have time to actually listen to Daniel Bwala, but Daniel Bwala from the ruling party was on, and he said, well, hold on, this is not sectarian at all. We respect Shias in our country, but it's a specific type of Shiism within your movement that calls for Vilayat-e Faqih, that calls for a kind of Iranian-style revolution in the country that doesn't respect the constitution. That's the problem that the government and Nigerians have with your group. That's why they don't consider you a normal minority expression of Islam within Nigeria's Muslim community. Tell me what you think about that.
Well, first of all, the government has no place in deciding what or who is particularly Islamic, as Nigerian government and the Nigerian community is not. First of all, it's not even consist of all Muslims. We have all kinds of people and all kinds of religion. And according to the Nigerian government and the country is a secular country. And that means everybody is allowed to practice whatever they want to practice. So first of all, the whole justification of it's just this one denomination of the Shia that we have a problem with is not really credible. You understand?
No, certainly. But what they're saying is that you want to overthrow the state, which puts you outside of a definition as a religious group and makes you a political group.
Well, we are a religious group, and we are, of course, a political group. Everybody is everything in our lives is decided by politics. Of course, we do speak about political issues and social issues and religious issues. My father's advocacy had always covered these issues all together because it is all parts of our lives, you understand? And I don't believe that... First of all, the Islamic movement had always been peaceful, and whatever it is advocating, it's basically just advocating that. And the government has no justification to crack down on people for advocating their views, you understand? Because we're free to actually advocate our views. We're supposed to be living in a democratic country where people vote for their own ideologies and things like that. And the government is cracking down on people that they don't agree with their own narrative or their own perspective. Our own perspective, apparently, is what the government is claiming that they don't agree with. And that's quite disturbing, because if the government, as it is so-called democratic, if it was democratic, then it shouldn't be cracking down on people for having any ideology, no matter how much it is against theirs. You understand?
Okay, very finally, Ayobami, we've heard from Sohaila, and I wanted to give her as much of an opportunity as possible to fully express what the group believes. Has she convinced you in any way?
No way, she has not. Because if you go to Gelesu today in Zaria, the people don't want that man back. And you will ask yourself, what sort of religion is this? I mean, we have no problem with Shiite. Shiite people practice their religion in Nigeria unmolested because they are normal people. But when it comes to these Islamic movement people, they are completely abnormal. They don't practice just religion. They block roads. And Abuja people can now see what the people of Zaria suffered for years. These guys go on the road, block the entire road. Even if you have an emergency, medical emergency on the road, whoever is in that car is going to die because they will not leave the road. They are so barbaric, they block road. I mean, how do you, for the sake of whatever is sensible, go on a government road and tell other motorists not to pass because you are having a procession?
But you're talking about,
you do this thing every day.
You're talking about blocking roads as barbaric.
You bring in women, you block roads.
I don't have much time, but I'd hope to.
How do you
listen,
block
I
road?
hope to invite you both back on the program. But you keep on talking about blocking a road as barbaric. Certainly, in a country where Boko Haram actually mutilates and murders, I think that
where in the world, do people block the
use
road
of the word
religion?
Certainly, I mean, a lot of people block it as a form of protest.
These guys make the life of
Black Lives Matter do it in America. They block the road in America.
Can I finish?
Certainly, they block the road in America as a means of political protest. I just don't think you can call that barbaric. Listen, Ayobami, you can't finish because I have to move on. But I'd love to invite you both back onto the program sometime soon. And I thank you for joining us here.
Okay, if you say it is not barbaric now,
That's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Next time, Imran Khan visits the White House. But will his meeting with Donald Trump turn a strained relationship around? We'll debate all the tweets that are sure to follow. Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.